Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. A landmark election in the country of Turkey on Sunday gives President Recep Erdogan sweeping new powers. Some say it's the beginning of the end of democracy for the democratic nation, the NATO member that was once a strong Western ally. Among the first international leaders to congratulate him was none other than our good friend Vladimir Putin.
Well, some say Erdogan sees himself as the leader of a new Islamic caliphate, ready to support the spread of radical Islam throughout Europe. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell explains.
Turkish President Erdogan hailed his victory as a lesson for how democracy works. Yet the election abolished the office of Prime Minister, reduced the powers of Parliament, and ushered in a new executive presidency that gives Erdogan sweeping new powers.
The election represents a 15-year attempt by Erdogan to make himself undisputed ruler of Turkey. Some believe he sees himself as the rightful heir to the Islamic caliphs who once ruled much of the Muslim world.
Erdogan has a vision. He is going to be the most important man, the influential man of the Middle East. He would like maybe to be a Khalif again. That's what I saw in the Turkish media.
Middle East expert Zvi Mazel says Turkey's new presidency is not like the U.S., but one that gives Erdogan a monopoly on power.
He will be in charge of all the ministries and all the organization in Turkey. You see? There will not be kind of check and balance, nothing. He is the only one who is going to decide. If the results are confirmed, Erdogan will be, from now on, a real dictator.
Since a failed coup in 2016, Erdogan jailed thousands of his critics, including judges, teachers, civil servants, and journalists. This election gives him expanded powers over the legislature and judiciary, and presents a major challenge to Israel and NATO.
It's very grave. Not only that, he bought from Russia the S-400 system, anti-missile system. And while 2 days ago, he got the first F-35 from the United States.
The big question will be whether or not there will be a new opening towards Turkey's Western allies. A good test of that might very well be the NATO summit that's coming in about 2 weeks' time in Brussels.
Erdogan's allies and enemies reveal his allegiances. He supports the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas in Gaza. He compared Israel to Nazi Germany when Israeli troops defended their border. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
This has great prophetic significance, ladies and gentlemen, more than you realize. I want to show you a map. We've got a map right here that you remember in the book of Revelation, there were letters to the churches of Asia. Well, here they are. And guess what? They're all in Turkey. Look at that. There they all are. Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea, Patmos, Ephesus, Smyrna, all in Turkey. And when you look at the map of the 38th chapter of Ezekiel, he talks about Gog and Magog. Well, I think, you know, there's something called Meshech in there. That's Turkey. And Magog, of course, this is Rosh, means the head. And these Caucasian republics that border the southern part of Russia are all part of a coalition, Put, Meshech, Persia, that will come against Israel in the last days. The thing is being set up prophetically right before our eyes. And Turkey is the center. Remember, all those churches in Asia that are written by the Apostle John in Revelation, all in Turkey, every one of them.
I'm surprised looking at that map. I mean, there's so many, all in that one country.
Oh, remember, the churches of Asia, you know, Pergamum, Laodicea, we listen to all those. It used to be Christian centers, and they're all gone now. But Turkey was a profound NATO ally. And there was a revolution about 1921 or so that overthrew the caliph and ushered in a democratic, secular republic. And they've been our dear friends for ever since. But right now, this man is dangerous. Turkey is dangerous. He's trying to undermine Western civilization. He's the one that talked about the clash of the crescent and the cross, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, anyhow. Bad news, ladies and gentlemen, but it's all in prophecy. That's the amazing thing. This stuff is in prophecy. Those churches of Asia in Revelation, prophecy. Ezekiel 38, a coalition coming against Israel, all centered in there, in those southern Caucasian area and Turkey. Amazing. You'd never think. You know, remember, they used to say that Meshach, one of those things, you know, those, it was actually, Gomer was actually Germany. No way. It's not. It's Turkey. And Turkey is going to be the center of a move against Israel. And Erdogan, all that, you remember a few years ago, they had a coup, and he said, well, there's a coup. It was nothing but a phony exercise by Erdogan to take power. And he crushed the military, crushed anybody that would have been against him, crushed the judiciary. That was a few years ago. And now he's taken another step forward, done away with the office of prime minister. He's going to be the undisputed ruler. And it's not that he wants to be another caliph. He's being set up. You look at prophetic word, and this is getting closer to the Antichrist than something else. It's really bad news for any of us. Well, in other news, the immigration debate is getting hotter, with members of the Trump administration targeted for public abuse. John Jessup has more on that story.
That's right, Pat. The struggle to fix immigration isn't just dragging on, it's heating up. As lawmakers try to hash out a deal, members of the administration are feeling the pressure. CBN's Jenna Browder reports.
The battle over immigration continues at both the border and in Washington as both sides step up their rhetoric. As the struggle drags on, members of Trump's administration are feeling the heat. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders was asked to leave this Virginia restaurant.
As you're deporting and imprisoning.
Protesters shouted down DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen at this Washington restaurant.
Shame! Shame! Shame!
And they were outside her home, taunting and calling her a modern-day Nazi. DHS employees have been warned to take precautions.
How dare you separate children from their parents?
Representative Maxine Waters also voiced her outrage, encouraging more of these kinds of protests.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd.
In the face of the uproar, the president is doubling down on his zero-tolerance policy, while the administration works to reunite children with their families. We cannot allow all of these people to invade our country. When somebody comes in, we must immediately, with no judges or court cases, bring them back from where they came.
We need a wall. We need border security.
The Department of Homeland Security is reporting more than 500 kids have been reunited with their parents, though about 2,000 are still separated. The Pentagon now preparing to house detained immigrants on at least 2 military bases. But there are questions about how long families and children can be held. Right now, children can't be held longer than 20 days. Looking ahead, Republican lawmakers are expected to vote on a consensus bill this week. Congressman Mike McCall says it will deal with the detention of families.
We at a minimum have to deal with the family separation. I'm a father of 5. I think this is inhumane, and I think the pictures that we have seen, that's not the face of America I think that most people in this country want.
When asked if he thinks the bill will make it out of the House.
I am the eternal optimist, and I do think there are 218 Republicans that agree with the 4 pillars of border security.
But that could be easier said than done. Even if Republicans can get the votes to pass the bill in the House, it faces an uphill battle in the Senate. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Pat, back to you.
The Republicans have got to do it. They've got to get something together. And whatever it takes, if they have to jam one through and go against any of their rules or something, they need to do it, especially in the Senate. They cannot allow a few dissident Democrats to block this whole thing, because it will come back to haunt them. But, you know, Wendy, I was born in a little town of Lexington, Virginia. It's a beautiful town. It was used to call it the Athens of the South. We had 2 colleges there, Washington and Lee, where I went, and Virginia Military Institute, which is just down the road. And these were splendid colleges, and all of a sudden, in the headlines, I find that there's a little restaurant that didn't exist when I was there, called the Red Hen or something, and it's run by a New Yorker who denied access to Sarah Sanders on account of the fact she worked for President Trump.
Well, that explains why it was not Virginia hospitality.
Exactly. Well, Lexington people wouldn't do that way, but this is a transplanted New Yorker who, are you going to deny access to people on account of the views of their employers? Well, you work for General Electric or you work for General Motors, and I don't like their cars don't work, and therefore I'm not going to feed you. You know, this is crazy.
My feeling is this is going to backfire on that restaurant, if it hasn't already. You know, because there's plenty of Trump supporters, and there's plenty of people that just would think on either side of the aisle that that is wrong. You just don't do that.
This is, you know, at the end of Main Street in Lexington, where I grew up. This was Stonewall Jackson's place, you know. I mean, it's just crazy. I was born in his former home. It was made into a hospital.
You're kidding.
No. Wow. And 2 streets from us was something called Jackson Avenue. Oh, it was all on Stonewall Jackson, the Civil War, and here's somebody coming from New York and saying, I'm LGBT, blah, 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 whatever it is, and I will not serve somebody from the Trump White House. I mean, this is, but if this group says, you've got to make cakes to suit us, you've got to let us come into your establishments, you've got to give us equal access. All right, if that's your point of view, well, then how about according to the same point of view to those you disagree with? But they say, no, we're not going to do that. And we're going to take a vote of our employees. From my hometown, I want to apologize to America, but the hometown didn't do it. It was New York that did it. John.
Pat, President Trump is putting even more economic pressure on China. The White House plans to ban many Chinese companies from investing in U.S. tech businesses. It will also block new technology exports to China. The Wall Street Journal reports the measures are designed to stop Beijing from its plans to become a world leader in 10 major areas of technology. But the latest moves are raising concerns about the growing trade tensions between America and China. Well, the Justice Department says it has given House Republicans long-awaited classified information related to the Russia investigation. The delivery comes after lawmakers threatened to hold officials in contempt of Congress or even impeach them. Spokeswoman for House Speaker Paul Ryan said officials turned over more than 1,000 new documents late last week, but Republican lawmakers say it was insufficient. Congressman Mark Meadows tweeting the new documents represent a small percentage of what they owe. Speaker Ryan's office says the DOJ will have additional time to provide the other requested documents. Well, Attorney General Jeff Sessions says he'll hold the Justice Department accountable to investigate any possible bias at the FBI. In the second half of David Brody's exclusive interview with the Attorney General, Sessions talked about the controversial Inspector General's report detailing missteps in the Hillary Clinton missing email investigation.
Conservatives say the Inspector General's report details examples of political prejudice against President Trump, along with favorable treatment in the Hillary Clinton email server investigation. Yet the report said bias didn't have an effect. Plenty of House Republicans see it differently.
And attempts to minimize and mitigate this bias are so antithetical to what we want and deserve in our law enforcement officers, and it's dangerous.
So what does the Attorney General think of the report?
Well, it's a 500-page report. We are digesting it carefully. We are not going to be defensive. We are going to, in fact, take action wherever action is justified. And the Inspector General, I think, was pretty open, critical at points, and reported truth.
Is it fair to say there's political bias inside the FBI?
Well, I'll let the report speak for itself, and people can evaluate that.
In our interview, the Attorney General would not say the word bias. The new FBI director, Christopher Wray, has come under criticism for accepting the report's findings, leaving the Attorney General to defend him.
Chris Wray is a man of integrity and ability, and he is, in his own proper step-by-step way, improving the FBI.
Sessions tells me he's improving the FBI too.
We've got a new FBI director, a new deputy director, a new chief of staff, a new legal counsel, a new press person. Too many leaks coming out of this.
President Trump has consistently been critical of what he believes is corruption at the FBI. He's also been critical of Sessions when it comes to the Russia investigation.
And the president's frustrated about, this investigation that I'm confident I correctly recused myself on. But he and I agree on the great issues.
Sessions has weathered quite a few storms so far. As to the weather forecast for the future, well, that remains partly cloudy. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, David. A furious wildfire is forcing thousands of people from their homes in Northern California. The Pawnee fire is threatening several hundred homes. 3,000 people so far have fled the area. The fire sparked Saturday and has burned across 12 square miles, destroying a dozen buildings in its path. More than 200 firefighters are battling the blaze. It's just one of 4 large fires burning across the state. 3 others are burning in Oregon. Record high temperatures and high winds across the region are contributing to the fires. And Pat, definitely our friends out west could use a break.
Sure could. You know, it was interesting. You watched 60 Minutes this last Sunday. Governor Brown was saying, well, those fires are really the result of global warming, and the president, if he, quote, fears God, would do something to alleviate global warming. But that Paris Treaty was a disaster. It was stacked against the United States, gave little or no pressure on China to clean up its act, but at the same time would have resulted in us giving up great swaths of our industry to international bodies. It was a horrible treaty, and the president was absolutely right to get out of it. But Wendy, I don't know if there's any truth to global warming. I had an expert on this program talk about the thing, and he says that from what he can see from the weather, the global warming is more of a hoax than it is real science.
We had one of the coldest winters that we've had in Virginia this winter, and of course it is very hot right now. I don't know. I think it's all, if you look at the history, it's cycles. It's cycles. Yeah. Like when you were a kid, you said it used to get so much snow, and then now these days we don't really get that much snow in Virginia. Exactly. But everything happens in cycles.
I mentioned the fact that it's hotter on Mars, and we don't have any SUVs driving in Mars the last time I heard, and no oil wells or anything.
As a believer, as a Christian, I think God is smart enough to figure out how to keep us all from burning up or freezing to death, and he's done it all of these years, so I'm not worried.
When the time comes, the sun is going to get very hot, and we will burn with fiery heat, but right now, I don't think that's the time, and I think these treaties are very much flawed, but nevertheless, we've got if you're a so-called climate denier, I mean, you're in a whole class of ignoramuses that everybody makes fun of, but I just don't see it yet. You're right, we had one of the coldest winters, had all kinds of snow, terrible amounts of snow in the Northeast. So they say, well, that's climate change too. It's all, they'll find something that'll say, well, it's all climate, but I don't know, but all I do know is that they need rain in California.
Amen. And we're praying for that.
Praying for it.
Prayer
Amen.
works.
All right.